Lisa Frank is loved for its oversaturated colors, maximalist designs, and of course, its adorable characters. But its real legacy isn't as cute. It is a story of betrayal, a toxic work environment, and someone getting evicted from their home. So let's find out what happened to Lisa Frank. Hello Internet, welcome to Style Theory, the show that's healing its inner child one nostalgic brand at a time.
Oh, you're so cute, you're so cute.
Whether you're a millennial, Gen Z, or even Gen Alpha, you can probably spot a Lisa Frank product from a mile away. I mean, they are kind of eye-catching, to say the least. From its start in the late 80s all the way up through the early 2000s, these characters were everything that people wanted on their school shopping list.
The stickers were so cool. The colors were awesome. Wow, there's tons of awesome Lisa Frank stuff. I gotta have it. What more can I say?
Yes, that was a tiny Mila Kunis in that commercial. The world is wild. Lisa Frank was a school supply titan. At its peak in the late 90s, the Lisa Frank company was bringing in over $66 million USD in sales per year. But much like Beanie Babies, Furbies, and Labubus, eventually the trend died off. The company went dark, leading many to believe that they just went out of business. Except it never did. Over the past few years, new Lisa Frank products have been popping up left, right, and center. But with this rebirth came a whole wave of Lisa Frank colored controversies, both new and old. Over the years, there have been YouTube testimonials, expose articles, and even a 4-part docu-series about the brand. But how did all of this lead to one creator getting evicted from their apartment? To find out, we need to take a trip down the rainbow-colored well of Lisa Frank's dark side. First, we need to understand the already shaky foundation that Lisa Frank was built on. Lisa Frank Inc. was originally founded as a sticker company in 1979 in Tucson, Arizona, by none other than Lisa Frank herself. That's right, Lisa Frank is a real person. And if you never knew that, well, it was on purpose. Turns out that Lisa Frank is a very private person. In fact, if you try to look up what Lisa Frank actually looks like, there are only a handful of photos and videos that even exist, and most of them are from the 90s. Living your life offline, we don't know her. In the very rare instances where Lisa has granted someone an interview, it's almost always been done off camera or with her face obscured. But while she very much prefers to work behind the scenes, that's not to say she isn't a colorful character IRL. According to the people who know her IRL, her fashion is right in line with her art. Kind of like this or this. She built the business alongside her future husband and Lisa Frank CEO, James Green. Together, they ran the business out of a rainbow-wrapped factory on Lisa Frank Avenue. Yes, they had their own street. I mean, how else would you know that you've made it? But over the years, they developed a reputation for being a little, well, demanding. If a design didn't come out the way they hoped or a detail was out of place, they would let you know, and not always in the most constructive way possible. And if you had to leave early, well, no you didn't. One day, an employee needed to leave early to get to the bank before it closed, but the company wasn't keen on people clocking out early. So to avoid being seen, the employee snuck out through the warehouse rather than using the front door. But she wasn't quite as sneaky as she thought, and the next day, James allegedly told the warehouse manager to lock all of the exits so that none of the employees could escape again, which is very much illegal. In another instance, there was reportedly an employee who had diabetes. In order to maintain his blood sugar, he had to leave at 5 o'clock every day to have dinner. The company did not like that, and according to his accounts, this was the reason he was ultimately fired, which is very much illegal. And then you have what may be the most infuriating and heartbreaking story of them all. One day, one of Lisa Frank's accountants sadly passed away while in office. But did everyone get sent home for the day after a tragic event? Nope. While the man's body was removed from the office, everyone else was expected to just keep working like nothing had even happened. No counseling, no empathy, no nothing. Which I haven't been able to prove is actually illegal, but it should be. At one point, the company was basically a revolving door of employees, where people could be hired and fired at the drop of a hat. Remember, bestie, if a company is churning through employees like it's a meat grinder, that is a sign that that place is a bad place to work. Yet, the company had a newsletter that was distributed to all of the employees, one that would often talk about things like being loyal to your employer. Ugh, big yikes. The company culture only got worse when Lisa and James divorced in 2005, forcing employees to choose sides as a multi-year legal battle played out to see who would finally own the company. In the end, Lisa Frank the person gained full control of the business. But by then, Lisa Frank the brand had already fallen from its 90s high. Nevertheless, she and the company persisted. But this was just the beginning of Lisa Frank's downward spiral, because it turned out that you didn't have to work for Lisa Frank to end up being royally, rainbowly screwed. In 2020, Lisa Frank announced that it would be teaming up with makeup brand Morphe to release a new line of colorful and fun products. Makeup bags and brushes decked out in that classic rainbow leopard print, their iconic characters front and center on the packaging, and even an eyeshadow palette with no less than 35 different colors. And honestly, the coolest part about this whole collab was how the makeup palettes were actually designed to look like the original Trapper Keepers. Yeah, that hits me right in the nostalgia. This appealed not just to kids who had grown up with the brand, but to the rising Y2K nostalgia of Gen Z. There was just one problem. You see, this wasn't the first time that Lisa Frank had attempted a makeup collection. It's just that the first one didn't turn out so well. Just a few years earlier, a different company called Glamour Dolls reached out to Lisa Frank about doing their own makeup collaboration. Glamour Dolls came to the table with tons of ideas on how to bring the Lisa Frank vibe into the world of cosmetics. They wanted to release a nail polish with a unicorn horn top, a highlighter-inspired powder, and yes, even a Trapper Keeper-inspired eyeshadow palette. Wait, that sounds really familiar. With Lisa Frank's blessing, Glamour Dolls launched a campaign on the crowdfunding site Kickstarter, with the goal of raising $30,000 of the initial funds they would need to make their rainbow-filled dreams come true. And raise funds? They did. Their campaign ended up being supported by nearly 6,000 backers, and it raised over $370,000 USD, which was well over 10 times their original goal. But this is where all of that good news just ends. The campaign ended in April of 2017, and the plan was to start getting products out to customers by that August. But August came and went, with no products. And by the end of that year, there was still nothing to show. Spoiler alert, they never actually ended up releasing any of their planned products. This left backers, including those who had pledged over $200 on the campaign, with nothing but broken dreams and empty wallets to show for it. So, what went wrong? Well, that kind of depends on who you ask. According to Lisa Frank, Glamour Dolls was responsible for everything. They had made the Kickstarter, and so they were solely responsible for getting products to backers. But Glamour Dolls was telling a completely different story. They said that it was Lisa Frank's fault that they couldn't make the promised products. This was allegedly because Lisa Frank herself was dragging her feet through every step of the process. According to Glamour Dolls, she would sometimes go back and forth for weeks on a design, only to scrap it all at the last minute. They also claimed that Lisa was painfully slow to provide them with the artwork and assets they needed to make their designs. And reportedly, she wanted to completely redo a product that was already promised to the Kickstarter backers. One of the big draws of the project was this vegan leather bag, available to anyone who pledged more than $45. Which, let's be real, was a steal. I mean, for comparison, a Loungefly Lisa Frank backpack runs roughly $90 USD. But what made this vegan leather bag so important, aside from the fact that roughly 2/3 of the backers had pledged for it, was that Glamour Dolls had built their business on making products that were both vegan and sustainable. And so when Lisa allegedly turned around and suddenly wanted to make the bag out of plastic vinyl instead, you know, the very sustainable material, and Lisa Frank's response? Well, plastic's vegan. According to Glamour Dolls, it was stuff like that preventing them from being able to fulfill on their campaign promises, and the backers were starting to get understandably impatient. They sent angry messages to Glamour Dolls demanding answers, but as the delays grew longer and longer, and their customers got angrier and angrier, Glamour Dolls' reputation was getting worse and worse by the day. If they wanted to have any chance for this situation to work out, well, Glamour Dolls couldn't just throw Lisa Frank under the bus. That would have tanked the deal for good. But to make matters worse, they weren't just in a time crunch from their backers. They were racing against another rainbow-colored clock. You see, in order to have the right to be able to put Lisa Frank's name, colors, and characters on their products, Glamour Dolls had to enter into what is known as a licensing agreement with Lisa Frank. Now, this is pretty standard for these sort of collabs, but essentially what it means is that Glamour Dolls pays a fee to Lisa Frank, and in exchange, Lisa Frank grants them the rights to use the likes of Marky the Unicorn or the Dancing Dolphins on their products. And this wasn't just one payment. Glamour Dolls had to keep paying Lisa Frank if they wanted any chance of fulfilling any of their Kickstarter orders, which, given how Lisa was still dragging her feet through the entire thing, was starting to add up to a lot of money. The original agreement had Glamour Dolls paying Lisa Frank around $25,000 per quarter, but eventually that fee ballooned to an insane $125,000 per quarter, while they still had no products to show for it. In total, Glamour Dolls ended up paying Lisa Frank almost $500,000 to use the rights to their brand, despite their Kickstarter only raising $370,000. Eventually, the math just wasn't mathing anymore. In July of 2018, over a year after the original Kickstarter had ended, Lisa Frank terminated their licensing agreement with Glamour Dolls, officially ending any and all hope that backers would ever receive their products. But that is not the end of the story. In 2021, Glamour Dolls filed a lawsuit against Lisa Frank the company and Lisa Frank the person for breach of contract in terms of their licensing agreement, among other things. And this lawsuit is still going on as of the recording of this episode. Obviously, we don't know how this lawsuit is going to pan out. I mean, there's a lot of details between these two companies that we just don't have access to. But in fairness to Lisa Frank, a number of charges against her from the lawsuit have been dismissed by the judge. So right now, we don't know who will be the winner. But the clear losers were the backers. And so when Lisa Frank and Morphe teamed up to launch their very similar looking makeup line, it would have been in good faith for Lisa Frank to make it up to those Kickstarter backers. But nope. But what if I told you that Lisa Frank could ruin your life? Yes, your life, even if you haven't worked for her, backed one of her projects, or even met her in real life. It's time to talk about the latest in Lisa Frank's long line of strange cases, the eviction. Let's start by introducing you to Amina, better known online as the Tassel Fairy. Amina loves rainbows. They put them everywhere from their hair to their clothes and shoes and even their apartment. An apartment that Amina had dubbed Cloudland. It featured rainbow mural designs, a cool splatter wall, and even the kitchen cabinets were decked out in pastel. It basically looked like an Airbnb straight out of a Ryan Trahan video. But this is where things take a tragic turn. At some point during Amina's documenting of their Cloudland makeover, Lisa Frank found their posts, and she seemed to be a fan. According to Amina's personal accounts of the situation, not only did Lisa Frank start following them on Instagram, she started leaving comments on their posts, and even DM'd them a couple times to show them support. Now, it's clear that Lisa Frank was aware of Amina's work, and that she was pretty obviously a fan of Cloudland, which cool. I mean, we love supporting creators, right? Well, out of the blue, people started messaging Amina congratulating them, but they had no idea why. Without them knowing, in the apartment building right across the street from Cloudland, Hotels.com had opened a once-in-a-lifetime pop-up experience in collaboration with none other than Lisa Frank. That's right, a whole apartment transformed into a rainbow-themed wonderland directly across the street from Cloudland. And taking a look at the designs, it arguably looks heavily inspired by Cloudland. So much so that people thought Amina was directly involved, hence people sending them congratulatory DMs. And what makes this whole situation that much weirder? Well, that building that was hosting this brand new rainbow-colored pop-up was owned by the same management company that owns Amina's building. And it was around this same time that Amina said their apartment complex was trying and ultimately did evict them from their apartment, meaning that they had to repaint all of their rainbow walls and cabinets and return their apartment to its plain, boring white walls. Cloudland was no more. From Amina's perspective, this was no coincidence. They believed and still believe that Lisa Frank was somehow involved in getting them kicked out of their Cloudland. But as of this episode, there is still no legal evidence to back that up. Now, it's clear that Lisa Frank was familiar with both Amina and Cloudland, and it seems extremely likely that they took inspiration for building this pop-up from Cloudland. Which, legal or not, is not a great look. But this brings up an interesting question. If Lisa Frank was legally proven to have stolen the idea of Cloudland from Amina, then what could they do about it? When you create a piece of art, whether it's a book, movie, or painting, you are automatically granted copyright protection for that work. If someone then tries to steal your work, you have the legal resources to sue them, even if you never officially filed for copyright protection from the government. The only problem is that copyright for interior designs is not quite that straightforward. In general, copyright can protect physical aspects of an interior design, like the art, sculptures, or photographs. But it can't protect ideas. So the functional aspects of a space, like the arrangements of the furniture, the lighting, or even the paint selection, cannot be protected by copyright, as they are considered ideas rather than original artistic expression. Your mileage may vary. So while Amina would have copyright protection over the murals they painted and the photos that they took of Cloudland, it's likely that a court of law would not find that they have copyright ownership over the idea of a rainbow-themed apartment, even when the two look very, very similar. And all of this is only a piece of the dark side of Lisa Frank puzzle. It's hard to imagine that the brand behind this colorful world where the characters are always happy and smiling could end up having this many skeletons in its closet. And with its sudden resurgence online, in stores, and even in our food, we have to decide if we can separate the adorable art from the artist and her company. But hey, that's just a theory. A style theory. Keep looking sharp. Up next on Style Theory.
Wait, they are going to fine me $250,000. Excuse me, what?
Yeah, the everyone is stealing from Poplex saga just got even crazier.